Hello, and welcome to another segment of the Coatesville Area Public Library's Oral History Project. I'm your host, Kirk Witmer, and with me today is a longtime and very important figure in our community, someone who's been involved in education, athletics, and most importantly, history. Please welcome Ross Kershey. Ross, it's nice to have you with us
Kirk,
today.
very nice to be here with you today.
Ross, you first hit the Coatesville scene in about 1956. Can you tell us what brought you to Coatesville?
Yeah, I think there was something deep within that meant for me to be in Coatesville. After I graduated from Temple University, I went to Indiana UPA to get teaching credits and my student teaching. So one day after all that was completed, I went in to see the placement director, a fellow named Dr. Davis. We talked for a while, checked to see if my credentials were okay, and I mentioned I was in social studies and I wanted to coach basketball. Then I left. 10 minutes after I left his office, he got a call from Sam McDonald, superintendent of schools at Coatesville, who wanted to know if he had anybody in social studies who could coach basketball.
Oh my.
So by the time I got back to my home in Connellsville, the phone call from Mr. McDonald was waiting. I came out for an interview. I got the job. That's 1956. I've been here ever since.
And the rest is history.
So I guess it was meant for me to be in Coatesville.
I would certainly think. Ross, we mentioned history, and the rest of it is being history. You've been teaching social studies and history for how many years?
42.
42
I retired
years.
in June of 1998, starting in September of 56, so it was a total of 42 years.
Well, Ross, in that 42 years studying history, I'm sure you've also studied Coatesville history very closely.
Yeah, it's become a part of my teaching. It's become a part of my interest. I've inherited slides from teachers. I've taken them on my own. I've become pretty close with Gene Diorio and the Greystone Society and First Avenue in Coatesville, who are doing their best to keep Coatesville history restored. So, yeah, it's been a real hobby with me, a real passion, I might say. And my intent is not only to learn, but to pass on, because many residents of Coatesville who have lived here all their lives, as I haven't, really don't know a lot about this town's history, and there is quite a bit of it involved.
I know as an elementary student growing up in Coatesville, I myself was taken on field trips in and about the city of Coatesville, and we got to see some of the more significant landmarks, such as Peter Bazillion's house on Harmony Street, etc. But let's not talk about the ancient history of Coatesville today. Let's get some of your personal perspectives. What changes have you seen we'll start with downtown Coatesville, since 1956?
When I came to Coatesville in 1956, I was impressed. It was a bustling, economically strong community. Lucan's was going strong. I think they employed over 4,000 people at the time. Downtown was a bustling area with movie theaters. Every storefront was open. There was something going on. On Friday nights and even Saturday nights, you couldn't walk down the street. The place was so crowded. There were restaurants downtown, things to do. The YMCA was a center of activity. We had the Auditorium Theater. We had the Silver Theater. The Palace Theater next to Shertock's was not open when I was here, but it had been opened not too long before that. So it was simply an economically thriving area, a bustling area, and an area that looked like it was going to stay strong economically, because who knew what the future of the steel industry was at that time.
Now, our school system was quite different then than it is now, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was no Brandywine area. That came in 2 years after I started. I believe it was 58 or 59. It was the Coatesville School District, period. And we only had two junior high schools. That was Gordon, which is our current location of Benner. And then there was James Adams School at 8th and Merchant Street, which doesn't exist anymore. And that was basically the school for the African American students, although some blacks did go to Gordon. But basically it was a segregated situation with Gordon and James Adams. And then Scott was the senior high school, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And the elementary schools were spread throughout the area. But yeah, we weren't the giant corporation consolidation we are today. But I remember Scott High School at the time in the 60s being very crowded, so much so that we had to go on split shifts at one time in Scott to take care of the people. So along with the community itself, yes, I've seen many changes in the Coatesville School District.
Ross, I'm sure that with 42 years of educational history under your belt here in the Coatesville area, you've probably seen a lot of changes in attitudes and approaches to education among your students and also their parents as well, right?
Yes, I have. I think one of the biggest changes I've noticed is when I came here in '56, maybe for the first 20 years, the high school was really the center of the kids' social life. This is where you came, and your social life was based on the high school. We had a pep rally on Friday last period. Then we went to a football game at Scott Field on Friday night. Then we had a dance after the game in the gym. When there was a basketball game on Friday night, it was always followed by a dance. The school seemed to be the center. There were many dances throughout the year, social events, Halloween parties, and things like that. But as the years go on and the school becomes less a central part of the life, many of our students work. As soon as school's over at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, they go to work. And the school has become less important. There are very few dances. They're not well attended when they do. The athletic events are still fairly well attended, but they're not the center of the life as they once were. I think that another big change that I've seen is in the parental situation. When I first came here, usually one parent worked. The kids had a home connection. Now with two parents working, sometimes the schools have been asked to take on that added responsibility. It's not just our job to teach the kids, but we've assumed parental responsibility, home responsibility, health care, things like that. Things that at one time were considered to be parents' responsibility. It seems like the schools have taken this up, and it adds to the burden. Becoming a teacher and simply teaching classroom subject matter, no, that's not the way it is anymore. There's a story about you must teach the whole child, and I think that's certainly true. I see that as a big change over the years. Schools have had to assume parental responsibility because a lot of that responsibility in the home is simply missing.
Ross, I've heard it said recently, not an expression we'd like to talk about, but it was said that a lot of parents would like to drop their students off at age 5 and pick them up again at age 18. Do you have any thoughts or observations you'd like to share on that?
Well, that may be a little overstatement, but I think it is. They see the school as offering all these answers to all their problems. And I did a little research one time, Kirk, that I think you may be interested in. If a kid is never absent and never late, he spends 1,100 hours per year in school. He spends 7,400 hours a year out of school. So the outside influence, the family, the home, and the environment has almost 7 times as much influence on that kid as the school does. Yet we seem to get all the blame for what's wrong with society. The ills of society are placed on us. And we do have an influence on children's lives, but not the same as the home and the environment that they face there. And we get blamed for things that I think are totally out of our control.
Very interesting observation. Ross, you've talked about the decline of the school as a social center. However, athletics in Coatesville are still very strong, and you've been a very integral part of athletics in Coatesville over the years. Are there any memorable moments you can share with us? What sticks out in your mind?
Of course. My first year here, when I came, I was JV basketball coach for 6 years and an assistant track coach for 4 years. And I wound up being the head basketball coach for 22 years and the head track coach for 14 years. Most people know basketball because it's the big spectator sport, but my record is far more impressive in track and field than it ever was in basketball. I think in track and field we had 103 wins and 1 loss in my 14-year career. And the last year I coached in 1974, we had an undefeated dual meet season. We won the Chessmont, we won the district, we won the state championship, we won the Eastern United States Championship in a meet in Randall's Island in New York. And the mile relay team that year in 1974 won the Penn Relays Championship of America against the best teams not only in the United States, but the best teams in the world, including teams from Jamaica, which have dominated. So I think track and field, my big year would probably be that last year, 74. It was the last year I coached. I retired after that year. I figured there was nowhere else to go. With kids like Dave Lapp and George Holmes and Ronnie Hunt and Doug Lewis, I mean, those were great people and great kids as well. Basketball, if I have any regret in my entire 42-year career of teaching, it's that we didn't quite get that final jump to be state champions in basketball. Was happy to see our girls do it in 93, 94. That's always something, but I think the longer I coached, the more I realized that wasn't necessary for me to consider myself a successful coach. We had a lot of great teams, a lot of great years. In 1981, we made it to the Eastern final, and had we won that game, would have been in the state championship. We had great players like Hugh B. Marshall, Rip Hamilton, of more recent note. In my early years, I had Chuck Carroll, who's now our AD. Skoogie Smith was on my team, who's now the head coach. So I think the number one thing I'm happiest about in all my years of coaching is the young men that I coached who went on to better lives, and I think athletics helped them. My biggest regret is not just that basketball situation, but the fact that many other young men did not use their opportunities. Athletics opened the door for them, and they did not go through. My biggest probably failure, or my biggest defeat, is to see young men who didn't use athletics to make a better life for themselves.
Ross, we've talked a lot about the glory days of Coatesville and the days when things were so exciting and we were a hub of activity. But there has been a noticeable decline over the years. Give us your take, if you would, on what has been the underlying causes for that tapering off.
Well, I think economics is a big factor. As I said, when I came here, Lucan's employed over 4,000 people. Now I think it's somewhere around 11 or 1,200. The steel industry in this country has taken a big hit. They refer to the steel mills out where I'm from in the Pittsburgh area as the Rust Belt, because nothing's happening there. And Coatesville's paid the price for that too, economically. Also, the shopping area has moved out. When I came here, shopping malls were unheard of. The King of Prussia thing was a big experiment. Now there are malls everywhere. So a downtown area like Coatesville with limited stores, limited parking, they're hurt badly. The entertainment used to be in town, but now there are mega movie theaters all over the area where you go see 8 movies, 12 movies, 16 movies. So that was the demise of the downtown area as far as entertainment. And that killed the restaurant business. Coatesville used to have several good restaurants, and most of them are gone now because, again, there's no activity downtown. And I think underneath the underlying cause of it all is the economics, the shopping malls, the moving of movie theaters outside of town. Entertainment is now outside of town. So I think Coatesville's not unique in this. Most every small town has suffered the same thing. But after a while, they start to recover. And hopefully we're going to see some of that. I know there are very active people downtown who don't want to see Coatesville go the way of other communities. And I'm hopeful that maybe we can recover as some small towns have.
Well, we have certainly seen some efforts toward revitalization, particularly with the Coatesville Cultural Society as a prime example, and the support that they've received from City Council. But it could very likely be a long road to hoe, so to speak. What suggestions might you have for what we could do to speed that process along and bring us back to what we once were?
I wish I had answers for that, Kirk, but I really don't know. I have some ideas. I think there has to be things to bring the people back into the town of Coatesville itself. There has to be attractions there. There's a lot of history in this town, and every year or other year, Coatesville has done historical tours, and people from all over the Chester County area come, but not many people from Coatesville do. I guess they think they know it, but they really don't. There's so much here. And I think the Cultural Society has a step in the right direction, but I think people have some idea about not coming back into town. For many of the area residents, Coatesville is a place they bypass on the way to work. The Route 30 bypass takes them around Coatesville. People have moved into our community, into the school district, but not into Coatesville itself. And we have to find things that will bring them back, be they historical, cultural, entertainment-wise. You've got to get people back into town, and that's, as you said, it's going to be a long, hard road to hoe. But I think it can be done, and I greatly admire the people who are trying to see our town revitalize itself.
Ross, I certainly want to thank you for being a part of our oral history project. You've brought some new insights to the program, and I'm glad that you were able to participate with us.
Kirk, I'm very happy to be here. When I first came to Coatesville, this was going to be a stop for me about 1 or 2 years, and then I was going to move on to bigger and better places. And obviously in my life, I've never found any bigger and better place. I'm a Coatesville person, And I think the key thing I felt, and I think every good teacher feels, is not only do I need here, I think the here, Coatesville, needs me. I think I have something to offer. And I think every good teacher feels that way, that we have something to offer. There are many kids in Coatesville who won't make it without a positive image from someone, be it their family or in the school system. A lot of these kids aren't going to make it. And my hope for myself is that I've helped some to make it.